There is power in diversity. There is significance in inclusion. As a member-based organization with a diverse range of members that make up a variety of sectors, business sizes, and representations, we care about our community and the diverse voices that are an integral part of it. We know that to build and maintain a thriving business climate in our community, we must work hard, deliberately, and collectively to promote diversity and inclusion and make our businesses, our workplaces, and our neighborhoods a safe space. Hello and welcome to the Guelph Chamber of Commerce's mini video series, Power in Diversity. My name is Shakiba Shayani and I'm the CEO at the Guelph Chamber. Our Power in Diversity video series, in partnership with Sleeman Breweries and RBC Royal Bank, will provide businesses with critical thought leadership to help move the conversation on diversity and inclusion forward. The conversations throughout Power in Diversity will include a range of topics, and we're excited to launch our fourth of 5 videos today, focusing on women in entrepreneurship. Today, I am thrilled to welcome our guest, Dr. Janét Aizenstros, Chairwoman and CEO of Ahava Group Global. Today, I am thrilled to welcome our guest, Dr. Janét Aizenstros, Chairwoman and CEO of Ahava Group Global. Hi, Janét. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Shakiba. It's an honor to be here and so back into my community. I run a women-led digital consultancy that works with Fortune Corps and media companies to help them connect with women consumers in an emotional and intuitive way using data and technology. And so we started this company back in 2011, and then the company we pivoted the company in 2016 to focus more on what it is now. And it's definitely gained traction over the last 5 years, 6 years. That has kind of been a catalyst. So right now we are in just about 15 locations globally.
Oh, that's incredible. So tell me a little bit about, how did you become an entrepreneur? Is this something you envisioned for yourself?
I will share this. I think I've actually started sharing this story quite frequently now because some people think that there's a recipe. In my storyline, I always knew I was uniquely different at a very young age. And I always knew that I was going to be great at something. I just didn't know what. And then I had a passion for music, which everyone thought, well, maybe you'll go into music and maybe that's what you'll become famous for. But it actually wasn't. It was entrepreneurship. And even through my teenage years, I started a bunch of things, tried a multitude of things, failed at a multitude of things. But you want to know something? It didn't matter that I had failure. Failure was actually a really good thing. And so I wouldn't say that I knew right away that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I think it was an onset of just walking through corporate dynamics and walking through certain things in my personal life as well. That was like, you know what? If I'm going to believe in, I have to believe in myself. If no one else is going to believe in me, I'm going to have to believe in me. And so I embarked on this journey in 2011 where I started, which doesn't look like what I started at all, but I started a full service agency that was all across the spectrum. And what we began to do in 2016 is to fine tune what services that we were offering, and that's how Ahava Digital just became one out of 5 companies that kind of became the catalyst to our international prominence.
That's amazing. I mean, there's obviously some entrepreneurial spirit that existed within you. Were you meeting a gap or a need when you decided to start something on your own?
Well, I wouldn't say I was meeting a gap and a need. I initially, when I started, I knew that I had all of these gifts and these talents. And I was like, you know what? I am actually going to use all of these gifts and talents that I've been given naturally and put them into motion. And what I did was I saw what stuck and what didn't stick, and what remains today is what stuck. And some of those businesses went on to be successful in their own rights. Like we have an agency. So what we did with the creative part in 2016, it didn't come to fruition until late 2017, but it was an agency called 1221 Illustration. So we work still with big brands there, but we create content for them through different artists, whether it be like animation or just different types of media formats. But the narrative is about pushing inclusivity, diversity, all of these messages that brands are now looking to have a social focus with.
Well, it's good to know you've got some expertise in that. So speaking of the entrepreneurial spirit, there are, of course, obstacles or barriers in trying to pursue that type of endeavor. Did you face any yourself?
Um, I would share every entrepreneur faces obstacles and barriers. I definitely did. I would say in my journey, a lot of people show up at my door and they want to talk about business processes. I feel like the business processes or the systems that are implemented are the easy conversation. For me, it was much more personal. And so the obvious conversation that usually comes up, well, you're a woman in technology. Did you come up against barriers with men? Actually, I didn't. Men were actually my champions. They were the ones rallying me on, my advisors and my mentors. And I had a lot of really amazing women, but women, in fairness, even though that my whole movement is about women, many of them, it was an obstacle for them. And that a lot of that had to do with mindset. You know, as much as women, we are equal in terms of our intellectualism with men, we haven't necessarily been exposed to all aspects as they have around, especially around certain things within business. So a lot of times, if you don't necessarily see something, you don't believe that you can become that very thing. And so that's why I think the push on visibility is key to kind of helping women believe greater in themselves and knowing that they can. And that will also raise, a part of this emotional dynamic and vibration of relinquishing or eradicating insecurities that women feel about going into business.
I love that. And I love that you spoke about the visibility, seeing yourself in the work and in the opportunity. So if you don't mind me asking, being a woman of color, did that create any unexpected obstacles in your journey?
Um, I will share this in yes and no. Yes and no. And people are like, well, what would be the no piece? The no is probably the more impactful piece. I've been very mindful in the current social narrative to share my perspective on what I've experienced, not to trivialize or to diminish someone else's experience as well. I'm very objective on this conversation. And what I would share is what I shared before. I would say that a lot of the dynamics that I came up against were, in fact, women. And some of it was cultural. It's just a lot of times, you and I both being women of culture, and we've had this conversation before about cultural dynamics or subcultural dynamics that take place with mentality about those that are healthier operating in greater sense of abundance and those that haven't seen necessarily that form of abundance not understanding, and so what they do is diminish. So I probably have experienced some more of those types of dynamics, and a lot of people don't speak to that narrative because they feel they either unacknowledge or they feel when they get to a certain place they don't think it's important. But you need to understand, in order to create true transformation, you have to give back, and that means that giving back means offering intellectualism around conversations or having conversations that provide opportunity for people to be transformative in their own lives.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because we don't always talk about it, and understanding the different kinds of experience of women of color face is an important one to acknowledge. It's not the same for everybody, and there are different factors that impact the obstacles and the challenges that we might see and face. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. And I just wanted to add on to that. The cultural dynamics are important. And I don't think that we talk enough about that, because for a woman of color, a lot of times we think it's we're coming up against people that are not of color, right? We think it's them that are going to be our greatest obstacles. And then we discover, okay, for some it's fighting a two-sided battle. And for some they find more comfort being in the presence of those that are not of color, because they're not dealing with a lot of that combative behavior.
Excellent flag. Thank you. I think that'll be insightful for those tuning in. So let's talk a little bit about, the tools you might suggest women try as they move into the entrepreneurial space. Are there, kind of key activities you suggest people invest their time in?
Um, well, there's a multitude, a multitude of things. I would probably, one of the things that I recently did have asked is there a formula to success? And when people are looking at tools, as I said before, business processes are the easier part. Many entrepreneurs come up against the obstacle of self in this story. So when we're looking at tools, I would probably say some of a secret sauce is discipline. Okay, let's just talk about discipline and taking full ownership for the role and the responsibility of how you show up in certain situations. A lot of times I hear people say, well, I'm not motivated. Well, don't rely on motivation, because motivation is reliant on your feelings. And so you can be easily shifted to and fro. Discipline is getting up and doing the same thing even when you don't feel like doing it. It's just because you've been hardwired to do it, so now you're doing it. And so people don't realize like that develops consistency in order to get there. When we're talking about like, so that's some of the personal mindset tools, but when we're talking about some of the physical tools that are needed, one of the things that I want to kind of shatter a part of this perception, even though I'm an investor in women's businesses, you don't need a huge amount of money to start a business. Ladies and gentlemen, I started my business with $20 on a Squarespace website. Those of you can go online and see what it's scaled to now. And so I will share with this, I'm not saying that you don't need to seek investors or outside capital in certain circumstances, but what I would be more concerned about is actually putting the vision in motion and knowing that you will be supported along the way.
So speaking of the supported piece, tell me a little bit about your feelings and experiences with mentorship. Did you have mentors that encouraged you or that you looked to when you were starting out?
Absolutely. And so my mentors were very influential in kind of navigating and directing me in the way to go. So initially, when I started my business, it was local. It was in the basement of my former home. And I met a woman that's a Guelphite, and she saw me and she was like, honey, you're a big fish. Go to Toronto. Then I met another mentor along the way there that's like, guess what? You're a big fish. Go swim in an ocean, because at least you'll have the ability to move. Not to say that I couldn't succeed in Toronto, but I don't think I would have scaled to the level that Ahava Digital or made the impact that Ahava Digital has made. If we had stayed just exclusively in Canada. And so going to the United States was huge for Ahava Digital in terms of what we had access to, and not just resource, but also the one big part I share with women in business, relationships are key. Relationships are everything, personally and professionally. And so it definitely opened me to a different pool of people that became champions for me.
Love that. And if I can use it as a platform to quickly plug the chamber, that is one of the things we really believe in, is this idea of connection and network. And so if you're not sure where to start, I do really believe in the idea that the connections you're able to build and the people you're able to meet are a huge component of the growth and scaling ability. And hopefully we have women who get to meet you and will look to you as a mentor and your journey as a success story that they can look to as they think about how to scale and grow their business too. Okay, so, we'd be remiss to not talk about the fact that we are in a pandemic and unfortunately having this conversation still virtually. There's been a lot of talk about entrepreneurship being a really key component to kickstarting our economy, our recovery, and our rebuild. And the fact that entrepreneurship has the flexibility sometimes to provide women who have unfortunately had to leave the workforce because of the pandemic. Just wondering if you have any thoughts on this, and if you have any thoughts on the business climate that's required for a community to support entrepreneurship.
Well, I think the one thing that I'll share, I don't think you need a climate to support entrepreneurship. I think it's about seizing opportunities when you can. If people know the story of Rockefeller, Rockefeller grew up dirt poor, and he was presented with an opportunity. Or he saw an opportunity and he acted on that opportunity. I think you're going to see in this current climate, you're going to see that there are people that have thrived, regardless of whether they've lost jobs, regardless of what their gender is, um, regardless of the situations and circumstances that they come up against. I think I shared with you before that there was a gentleman that I had followed on social media for quite some time, or he was following me. And I remember him posting a video that he had lost his job and his wife was about to give birth. And during that time, I think what happened was she came up with like some type of hyperpigmentation. And he started creating a home formula. Well, the cool part is I recently, I haven't been on Instagram for so long, and I logged back on, and then I see that same man launched a business a month ago and is now doing 1 million in revenue, okay, in a day. And so I share with people, it's that you can seize your opportunities and moments if you make the choice to. If you just keep looking at the problem and not looking for a solution, then that's also your choice as well. But we all have to realize that we have to deal with the ramifications of our choices. I don't like putting gender on that, because people seize opportunities if they want to seize an opportunity, but I'm also mindful there have been people that have gone through very heartbreaking or heart-wrenching experiences because of COVID. I'm mindful of that, and I won't diminish that experience. But I've also seen people walk through that and have been able to seize opportunities because of some of the devastating aspects of their life.
Absolutely. And certainly the Chamber's committed to ensuring that there's an infusion of focus and support, funding, and attention to entrepreneurship, to the ability to scale and grow within our region, so that we don't lose people to the US or other countries if we don't have to, and perhaps some additional attention to some marginalized demographics that includes women because of the we've seen the secondary impacts of the pandemic. So I like what you're saying about mindset and about the fact that the opportunities exist and you have to go grab them, and we have to ensure we have some foundational support directed and targeted to support those efforts as well.
Absolutely. And I do think that ecom, one of the things, just to add on to that, women in a great way, especially for women that have lost their jobs, ecom is an amazing platform, right? You can do it. It doesn't matter if you have little children scurrying around you. I've seen some women take to SD or platforms like that, or Shopify, or setting up, or seizing the opportunity to start setting up that t-shirt, that baby, that interior design, whatever it is, that type of firm that you've decided that you want to do, just go out there and get it, right? Just go out and put it in motion. And it doesn't cost a lot of money to actually put any of those things into motion either.
Love that. Thank you for saying that. And again, if folks are looking to get more information about direction in entrepreneurship, to not hesitate to reach out to us and certainly our other partners in the community. Thank you so much, Dr. Janét, for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about Janét or the Ahava Group, we have linked their website in the description below. Thanks again. Thank you all for tuning in to our 4th Power in Diversity video. If you haven't watched our first video on inclusion, our second video on newcomers in the workforce, or our third video on accessibility in the workplace, I encourage you to check it out with the links in the description below. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Sleeman Breweries, for their support in this project. Sleeman Breweries is committed to developing a diversity strategy and laying out a plan for how they will be more diverse and resilient as a company. Their strategy and plan encourage open and honest dialogue and place value on the best ideas, skills, and experiences that all of their employees bring to the company. I encourage you to read the message from our sponsor below as well. I'd also like to thank RBC Royal Bank for supporting our Power and Diversity series. The Guelph Chamber is committed to these conversations to ensure we all continue to learn, unlearn, and support one another in being a welcoming, safe, and diverse community.